With this, an update on the ongoing Usyk Baumgardner anti-doping fiasco. Usyk, in her own words, says, "As I said, transparency is key for me, and after waiting 2 weeks, I received the full report. I can't share everything yet, but here's the first correction of what I bet will be many to come. The test did not show 2 substances. Still investigating. Stay tuned." I won't lie to you that I have a personal stake in Usyk Baumgardner's success. She worked in the shadows for many years. I viewed her as one of the most talented up-and-comers that most people aren't talking about, but should be. For many years, a fighter with real boxing skill, real ability, and enough charisma to not just box at the highest levels of the sport, but perhaps take the sport to a new level, because she's not just a good boxer, she's got crossover appeal, marketability. Not everybody has that. Take Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr., for example. These are 2 of the best welterweights in the world, or they have been for many years, but the both of them jointly have the personalities of warm oatmeal. Alicia's got flair. Not everybody has that, so I'd be lying to you if I told you that I didn't want her to clear her name, that I'm not rooting for her, because I am. I am rooting for her. The sport is rife with anti-doping fiascos. On the men's side, on the women's side, it's all over the place, whether you're talking about Alejandra Jimenez's anti-doping fiasco after the Franchon Cruz fight, or Hannah Gabriel's anti-doping fiasco ahead of what was supposed to be the Clarissa Shields rematch in men's boxing, in women's boxing. It's everywhere. So whenever this happens, the responses are uniform. The fighter claims to be innocent, they don't know how it happened, they don't know where it came from, and the spectators, in what is this spectator sport, they're jaded. They're cynical. They become cynical over time. The more fighters that end up testing positive for banned substances, the more cynical the fight fans become in reference to that subject. It's the kind of thing that don't go away. People won't hesitate to bring it up at the drop of a hat whenever it suits them. Though public relations nightmare aside, the implications for this failed anti-doping test are not limited to how people talk about Usyk moving forward, how it affects her legacy, how it affects her activity. It's not a victimless crime. When Alejandra Jimenez tested positive for a banned substance after the Franchon Cruz fight, the decision in the match was overturned as a result, and the belts that Alejandra won were then given back to Franchon Cruz. In this situation with Usyk, because the test that she failed was ahead of the Lenardatu fight, if she can't prove her innocence, that decision may be overturned. Could be ruled a no contest. And what belts Usyk is in possession of, they may be vacated if she can't clear her name. Initially, they said she tested positive for 2 banned substances, primobolan and mesterolone. Usyk Baumgardner is now saying in her own words that it wasn't 2 banned substances, it was just 1. Which one? We don't know at this time. Was it the primobolan or the mesterolone? Does it matter? And what bearing will that have on the subsequent adjudication that is sure to follow? Will it make a difference? It's not a victimless crime. The decision in her last fight could be overturned. She could be stripped of all the alphabet titles she currently holds. She could be out for a while. It's not a victimless crime. There were consequences. It was Matt Christie that said, "When the lines between right and wrong are blurred, it should be no surprise that those lines are crossed so frequently." Did Usyk cross the line? I'd like to think that she didn't. I'd like to think that she's a clean fighter because I have a vetted interest in her success, though I'd be lying to you if I told you that I didn't have the same cynical view on boxing and the same cynical view on organized sports that all of you already have. That the truth is, most elite level athletes are probably on something. Whether you're talking about cyclists or the MLB, the NFL, the NHL, the NBA, or the sport of boxing, it would be naive to think otherwise. Organized sports are rife with doping and anti-doping fiascos, so it would be naive to think that because you like a fighter, well, that just makes him a clean fighter. They would never. Who knows for sure what fighters claiming to be innocent actually are innocent? I mean, does that apply to Jarrell Miller? Did it apply to Alexander Povetkin or Alejandra Jimenez? More recently, Hannah Gabriel's? Heather Hardy tested positive for a banned substance once. Conor Benn, Dillian White. What fighters claiming to be innocent actually are innocent, if any of them actually are innocent, and what fighters are guilty? I can't tell you. I really don't know. Yeah, I would like to see Usyk resume her career as if nothing happened, as if none of this took place. That's not up to me. That's up to the powers that be. That's up to Usyk to clear her name. We'll see if she can. In men's heavyweight news, the continued fallout of this past weekend's contest, veteran trainer Teddy Atlas has no doubt on Usyk versus Dubois low blow ruling. He might have a glass belly. Even if Usyk does have an iron chin, he might have a glass belly. I believe he was legitimately hurt. I can't tell you if he was hurt because of the damage it did to the body or the damage it did to the groin area. It didn't seem to be on the groin area. It seemed to be on the side, but it was below the line and below where the cut begins. It wasn't dramatically below, but it was below, so it's technically a low blow. That's not too hard to define.
For some people it is.
Obviously, Don Charles, Daniel Dubois, and Frank Warren are going to ride this scooter until the wheels fall off. But even amongst the Gentiles, the boxing fans themselves, the boxing world is very much divided on this issue.
My thoughts.
It was below the navel. The punch was below the navel. It wasn't a belt line shot.
He hit him in the protector, drove it up into his balls.
What I saw, the business end of Daniel Dubois' fist, the knuckle portion of it, that was below the belt line.
That Daniel Dubois is a taller, much taller fighter than Alexander Usyk. Bigger too, and he's bending at the knees, bending at the waist, shooting an uppercut.
It landed on the protector.
What you're looking at is a supinated fist where the thumb portion of the glove is on the belt line, the thumb portion of the glove. But you don't punch guys with your thumb. You punch them with your knuckles. You punch them with your fists.
And the knuckle portion of Daniel Dubois' glove, the fist portion of it, that's below the belt line. That's on the trunks, pushing the protector up into Usyk's balls.
It's a low blow.
And I told you, I think it was Daniel Dubois' intention to hit him low. I think it was his intention to hit him low going into the fight.
That's what I think.
Though irrespective of what I think, there's a lot of pushback on this particular issue, and I think it's because Usyk is one of these guys, one of these overachievers. He's got a squeaky clean image, doesn't give you much to complain about, not particularly controversial like some other fighters. You'll notice that there's a lot of individuals out there in a hurry to bring him down.
Now they want to say he cheated. Now they want to say he got a gift from the ref.
You do something too good for too long, too often, you're going to see a concentration of individuals that want to see you fail.
Granted that Daniel Dubois and Don Charles, Frank Warren, they have their reasons.
And that's obvious.
As well as those closet Tyson Fury fans and all of their ulterior motives.
There's also that group of people out there, they just don't like Alexander Usyk. They don't like overachievers, like an Alexander Usyk or a Naoya Inoue, a Terence Crawford.
These kinds of fighters.
Believe it or not, when you do something too well, too often, for too long, there starts to be a concentration of people that want to see you fail. Now,
when the punch landed, that was about, 20, 30 seconds into the fifth round.
Referee Louis Pabon instructs Usyk to take his time, gather himself, and when he rises to his feet in the fifth round, there are still 2 minutes and 30 seconds, something like 2 minutes and 30 seconds left on the clock. Plenty of time in the fifth round for Daniel to pick up where he left off.
And remember, this is a 12-round fight.
That's saying you've got another 7 rounds. You've got another 7 rounds to find a shot like the shot that you just found in the fifth. You've got the rest of the fifth round. Plenty of time to pick up where you left off. But you've got another, 6 rounds?
You've got another 6 to target this guy's midsection. And you'll notice that in the 6th round,
6.
I saw Daniel Dubois land 2 right hands to Usyk's body and 1 good left hook. He finished off the 6th round with a left hook to Usyk's body. Usyk didn't go down. He didn't even wince.
So maybe it's not that Usyk has a glass body.
Like Teddy Atlas quips.
You hit him in the pelvic region, below the navel, pushing that protector up into his balls.
Usyk's belly button, his navel, it's right there where the belt line starts.
At the top of the belt line.
The punch and where it landed. It's at the bottom of the belt line where the trunk begins.
The thumb portion of Daniel Dubois' supinated fist is right there on the belt line, and the closed hand portion of it, the knuckles, they're on the trunks. It's not hard to see. It's not hard to figure out.
Then why do I keep having to explain this to people?
Well, the fight was last Saturday. The controversy, as it were, it's still fresh on our minds. There are still quotes coming out. It's still news. So while it's in the news, I'm going to address it.
Teddy thinks it was low. He thinks it was a low blow.
So do I.
If you don't like me saying that, then find another fucking channel.
Because I'm not taking requests and I ain't changing my tone for you.
Fuck off.
He will make Canelo look like a child. Can he beat Canelo? Terence Crawford will beat Canelo anytime. Just with the skill set alone, Terence Crawford is a master. He will make him look like a child. And that's just my boxing experience. Do I want Canelo to win? Yes.
In addition to the comments he made to Marcos Villegas, Oscar De La Hoya said, if that fight ever happens, I have to go with Crawford.
And I have to take anything Oscar says about Canelo with a pinch of salt.
Let's not pretend that Oscar hasn't been taking jabs at Canelo Alvarez ever since Canelo left him for Matchroom.
For Eddie.
We know that he has, but Oscar said, look,
listen,
and you know this, you know boxing, right?
Right.
At 168, people might think, how can Crawford beat Canelo? That's not possible, De La Hoya told ES News. But in boxing, a big talented fighter will beat the small talented fighter, right? That's a given. But then people might say, you're contradicting yourself. Pacquiao beat you. Well, I was a dead man walking, already even before I got into the ring. In Crawford's case, he's a big guy, but Crawford doesn't rely on his power.
Which is true, he's not a brute.
He relies on his IQ. Crawford, what he did to Spence was magic. It was incredible. It was amazing. One thing about Canelo is that we all know he walks into the ring as if there's wet cement on his feet. His footwork is a little too heavy. Crawford is such a smart fighter where he can he's like Bruce Lee, literally, and he's at his peak. He's in his prime.
He's 36. How could he be in his prime?
He's 3 years older than Canelo Alvarez. And I think Oscar's rationale is, while Terence Crawford might be 3 years older than Canelo, he doesn't actually have as many miles on the odometer as Canelo, because Canelo's been a pro boxer since age 15. Over 60 professional bouts.
Maybe that's what Oscar's thinking.
So I think, if the fight ever happens, which I don't think it will, if that fight ever happens, I have to go with Crawford. After initially pouring water over a potential fight with Alvarez as being too unrealistic, Crawford has since changed his tune, telling media outlets that he would welcome that matchup, and at 168 no less. Alvarez, similarly, was not keen on a potential Crawford fight, but he too has seemingly warmed to the idea in recent days.
How do we know this isn't Oscar just shading Canelo Alvarez, using Terence Crawford to do it? Wasn't he using David Benavidez a few weeks ago?
Now it's Crawford, you're picking Crawford to beat him? I'll tell you the truth that, irrespective of what Oscar said, and irrespective of what Oscar thinks and what his ulterior motives might be, I arrived at a similar conclusion before Oscar said any of this stuff. It's not as far-fetched, it's not as crazy as it sounds.
Whether you want to take it from Oscar or not.
On Tuesday, Crawford tagged Canelo Alvarez in a Twitter post saying their fight is definitely, by and large, the biggest fight in boxing. Alvarez is scheduled to defend his 4 super middleweight titles against undisputed junior middleweight champion Jermell Charlo on September 30th at the T-Mobile Arena.
And now we know. Errol Spence has activated his rematch clause, so Terence Crawford may be fighting him for a second time at 154.
That puts Terence and Canelo on a very similar schedule, that if Canelo takes care of business and caps off this year beating Jermell Charlo, all Terence has to do is beat Errol Spence Jr. again, presumably later on this year or early next year, paving the way for a Cinco de Mayo showdown between two of the top 5 pound-for-pound fighters in the sport.
Barring unforeseen circumstances, illness, or injury.
Most people with half a brain cell have Terence Crawford beating Errol Spence Jr. again. Most people do, and most people, they think Canelo's gonna walk through Jermell Charlo. Provided all of that pans out, this could be a very big fight. A modern day
Sugar Ray Leonard versus Harvin Magler.
How it breaks down, what you have to ask yourself, is stylistically, take away the size and just look at the styles of the fighters. Stylistically, who's got the advantage? Terence Crawford or Canelo Alvarez? And stylistically, based on styles, I'd say Terence has the advantage. So the question then becomes, can Terence's stylistic advantage overcome Canelo's size advantage?
It's the question.
I think that Terence Crawford would be the pound-for-pound best fighter Canelo Alvarez will have faced in a long while, the most malleable, the most versatile, with only one real disadvantage, that he's not a true super middleweight. Canelo Alvarez is. But like Oscar said, he does have slower feet than Terence Crawford, and if Terence uses the ring, moves lateral,
if he stays on the balls of his feet and doesn't let Canelo set his, he can diffuse his power. Take it away from him. Pick him off long range behind straight punches.
That's one way to look at it, just one.
What?
Another way you can look at it is, Canelo Alvarez, while he's not that much taller than Terence Crawford or that much longer, he can apply more pressure on Terence than any other fighter Terence has fought, because he is naturally bigger, more durable than any fighter Terence has fought, and he hits harder than any fighter Terence has fought.
You see, stylistically, we're used to seeing Canelo Alvarez be the shortest, stumpier fighter that has to work around another fighter's size. I mean, Danny Jacobs,
Rocky Fielding, Callum Smith, Billy Joe Saunders, Caleb Plant.
The dichotomy in those fights is that while those fighters are taller and longer than Canelo, they're not more skilled than Canelo.
So Canelo beats them. He overcomes their size advantage. It's the same dichotomy in a potential David Benavidez fight. David's not a better boxer than Canelo, or nowhere near as accomplished as Canelo. He's just bigger.
And younger.
But his size is his biggest advantage in that fight. Not his boxing. In terms of boxing, Canelo is the better boxer.
And we're used to seeing that. We're used to seeing Canelo overcome a guy's size with his boxing acumen, with his boxing skill. Against Terence Crawford, it's different.
Canelo's not used to being the bigger guy in the ring. He's usually the smaller guy, the shorter, stumpier fighter that has the better boxing acumen. With Terence Crawford, it might be the other way around. I dare say I could go for either fight after a Charlo fight. Canelo versus Benavidez or Canelo versus Crawford is fine by me.
Commercially, they could both be very big fights, but need I remind you that Terence Crawford's last fight with Errol Spence Jr. sold far more pay-per-views than David sold with Caleb.
What he's about to sell with Demetrius Andrade, there's a credible enough argument there that Canelo versus Crawford might actually be bigger than Canelo versus Benavidez.
It might be.
Though both fights have the potential to be commercially successful fights. Really, anything associated with Canelo has the potential to be commercially successful.
You know, with David, it is what we're used to. Canelo being shorter, but still a better boxer than the other fighter.
It's a good fight, don't misunderstand me, but stylistically, Canelo Alvarez has the edge stylistically. A come-forward, aggressive pressure fighter that squares up when he throws and he's open to be countered.
David's style plays right into Canelo Alvarez's hands, whereas Terence's...
It's a stylistic nightmare for Canelo, based on the styles, and the question is, can Terence Crawford's stylistic advantage overcome Canelo's physical advantage, or does Canelo just walk through him and knock him out?
Captures the imagination, that question.
We'll see if that fight happens.